There's been a lot of chatter about South Africa hitting a fiscal cliff or a debt impasse. And we thought we'd write our article this quarterly on exactly that subject. I have to say it's a complex discussion, and we can't really do justice to it in a video. So we're just going to give you snippets of it today, and hopefully you go and read the article. We think it's well worth the read in this quarterly. It's our lead article of the quarterly North Star Quarterly Report. With that in mind, let's just cover some of the pointers that we raise in the article. Firstly, what is debt default? And it's really a country's inability to meet its obligations in terms of debt repayments. This can be purposeful, or it can just happen as a result of over-indebtedness. Now, we don't think South Africa will be a typical debt defaulter. Instead, we believe that creditors will simply stop funding the level of government expenditure that's taking place currently in the system. Just some history on defaults. Spain has defaulted 6 times, Brazil 9 times, Argentina 9 times. And we look towards warning signs in our article. What tells us there's going to be a default or some kind of debt, an inability to repay those debts? We quite like the BlackRock Sovereign Risk Index, and they cover 4 main issues that give us an idea if a country is going to default. The first is fiscal space. How close or the proximity are they to distress? Then secondly, the external financial position of the country. Its macro variables. Are they highly exposed to macro drivers, not capable of managing their own future? And how much offshore debt do they have? Then the financial sector health. Does the country have a strong financial sector? And then lastly, the willingness to pay, which is actually just a cultural thing. And on those 4 measures, South Africa's fiscal space, we actually rate quite poorly. On our external financial position, we kind of average in that regard. Our financial sector health is exceptional. And our willingness to pay is actually quite poor. Albeit that we've only really had one debt standstill, which is 1985, just after the Rubicon speech. So we rank 47th out of 60 countries on this index, which isn't good. And just a few years back, we were 33rd. So clearly debt metrics are going in the wrong direction. What is worrying us? Well, I think firstly, just the magnitude of the debt that we are building. In South Africa, we've currently got 3.3 trillion rands of gross debt. By the end of the next 12 months, that's going to be 4 trillion. With a 700 billion rand extra amount added to that debt level through this period, just in terms of revenues versus expenditure not matching over the next 12 months. So we're going to expend about 1.8 trillion rand government expenditure this year, and we're going to raise revenues of about 1.1 trillion. So you can clearly see our budget isn't matching. So that really does worry us, the gross debt. And the second point is just the high interest rates that we're paying on our debt. And what we can see is real yields on the 10-year South African government bond has risen from 2% just a few years back, 2016, to 8% currently. So what we're seeing is that creditors are demanding higher and higher interest payments to fund the South African government. We've modeled for various scenarios in terms of the deficit. And what worries us is if GDP continues to be weak in South Africa and government doesn't cut its expenditure, we could hit deficits on a sustainable basis of 15% annualized going forward. It's completely unsustainable. There has to be some give. And that give will come in the following way. Firstly, significantly higher interest rates domestically to continue to attract capital. Secondly, a complete blowout of the currency. And thirdly, massive contraction in GDP. So we do see a very bad scenario for South Africa if government doesn't start curtailing its expenditure. It's really up to government to save the day. And from our perspective as a manager of your money, we have to make the right choices now. We don't know if government's going to solve the expenditure problem. We're quite concerned about austerity measures in South Africa because it's not populist. So we have to do really 2 things. We have to acknowledge that South African assets are cheap and already are discounting a lot of bad news, and some exposure to those assets are warranted in our clients' accounts. But then secondly, we have to continue to diversify your money in other jurisdictions that don't face these risks. We hope you enjoy the article.